Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope you're having an amazing week, that you're staying warm. We are now into the second half of this year, so I hope you've kicked off some serious personal and business goals as we go through. And tonight's topic is, just because you're buying your first home, does that actually make you a first home buyer? So as you know, you've heard me talk about before, at this point in time, yes, the market's doing funny things and it's getting lots better. However, it is perfect for the first home buyers right now. It's never been any better for first home buyers to get on and be buying property. Now, what that also means is a lot of people just assume that when they're buying their first home, that actually means that they're classed as a first home buyer. So I want to give you a couple of little trips and traps as to what a first home buyer actually is for the purposes of getting your first home benefits, because you don't want to bank on getting stamp duty exemptions and grants and things like that to find out that you're actually not classed as a first home buyer, okay? I know it sounds really simple, but believe me, I see a couple of things come through and people aren't prepared for it. So, first home buyers. Now, this advice is going to be really based on New South Wales. It is a little bit different for each state, all right? So, first home buyer, obviously the obvious one. Have you owned property before in Australia? That's a no-brainer. But here's the trick. It's per couple. So, if your wife, your husband, your de facto partner has owned property before, you are not eligible for the first homeowner grant. So you can't have a de facto couple where you decide to buy two houses and get two lots of first homeowner benefits. It is one per couple. So be really careful on that. People assume that it means you have to be married, but no, de facto is actually defined as the same type of relationship for these type of benefits, all right? So you can't say, hey, I'm going to buy my first home, come in, live with me, then in a couple of years when you get enough money, let's buy your first home, then we'll move into that and you'll get another lot of first home benefits. It does not work that way. One per couple. So you need to be really careful with that. And you need to remember also that when we're making declarations about whether we are first home buyers, they're actually statutory declaration, which means if you tell lies, you are fraudulent and you can get into big trouble, all right? So one per couple, all right? Another one is at least one of you has to be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. The exception to that rule is New Zealanders. New Zealanders are considered basically Australian citizens for these kind of revenue purposes, but at least one person has to be an Australian citizen or a resident, permanent resident of Australia. Now that's to get your stamp duty exemption. So there's two lots of benefits. You can get your stamp duty exemption, and on top of that, you can also get a grant, okay? But here's the kicker, the grant, you can only get a first home buyer's grant if you buy a brand new home or you buy a block of land to build a brand new home, all right? So if you're buying a home that's already existing and you're a first home buyer, you're an Australian citizen, you haven't had property before, your husband hasn't had property before, you only get the stamp duty exemption, all right? You don't get the $10,000 grant as well. The $10,000 grant is only for people who are going to buying a brand new house or building a brand new house, all right? Now, another qualification that you really need to make sure that you satisfy. If you're buying either an existing home, a brand new home, or vacant land with the intent of building a house on there, as soon as you have got the house, so you've either settled or you've built your home, you must live there for at least 6 months continuously in the first 12 months of ownership or when the house is constructed. So I'll just confirm that. You have to live in the property for at least 6 months continuously for the first 12 months. So what that means is 5 months and 29 days after you became the owner of the property, you can move in then, but you have to live there for 6 months continuously. And they actually audit this. They actually ask you for evidence. If you don't have electricity bills or rates notices going to that property, they can ask for evidence, photos, Facebook, social media to show that you have been living there. And if you actually get caught that you've received a grant and you haven't lived there, they will make you pay it back double. So that one is really, really important. A lot of people get caught out on that actually living there, okay? So if you're buying a brand new home, it's straight away after settlement. If you're building a home, it's within that 12 months after the home has built. So you need to be really, really careful there. Now, Wendy's got a question here. Let me just read it. If we purchased a farm previously on a business loan where we couldn't claim first home grant, does that mean we don't qualify? Sorry, I'm just trying to open the rest of the question. I'm really sorry, Wendy. Oh, yes, it's all come up now. If we purchased a farm previously on a business loan. Okay, so Wendy, if the farm had a house on it that you lived in, that could consider that, yes, you did have. But if you had farm, it wouldn't be considered residential property that you've had before. It would probably be primary production land. So it most probably wouldn't qualify for that. So it would also be, yeah, so Wendy, you might just want to clarify for me whether or not the farm had a residence on it in their property and whether or not you lived in the residence. There is a couple of qualifications there, but generally the farm itself and having a business loan, it also would say what names you had it in as well, what type of entity you had it in. You might have had a business name or a trust name that actually had the business loan for that farm. So it would be very different. But in kind of really basic terms, it comes to if you have owned residential property before in your personal name, then you would not qualify for the grant again. So the main reasons where I see people miss out is that they assume that they can buy a couple per couple. Yeah, Wendy, you wouldn't be able to get the first homeowners grant again. It would be very doubtful because you have actually had a residence before and you've had it in your name before. So technically, you are not a first home buyer because you had owned your principal place of residence beforehand. Even though it was a business loan, the business loan doesn't go to the heart of what the essence or the entity is of what you built and bought in. So please bear in mind that this is really heavily New South Wales based information and it changes state by state. But with your scenario, I actually think that unfortunately you won't qualify in any state because you have received those benefits already. And that's another thing, you only do get the benefits once. So there is your stamp duty exemption. And the really great thing about first home benefits is sometimes when people say, oh, I don't get the grant because I'm buying an existing home, the stamp duty exemption can often be worth far more than what the grant is. And the really good thing about the stamp duty exemption is if I go buy a home now and I move in, that home already owes me money because I've already paid 25 grand in stamp duty. All right, so that's already equity that I've lost. It owes me money straight away. I've got to pay off that 25 grand before I'm even starting to chip away at what the equity is and start to make some, money in my savings in that area. Where if you're a first home buyer, if you buy something for 400,000, you're not paying any stamp duty. Whatever you borrow, as soon as you start repaying your principal and interest, it's actually starting to chip around it all again, if that makes sense. Yes, Sally, definitely. A lot of the time, first home buyers, they often get their parents involved, which I think is a great idea. I often have first home buyers come in with their parents, and I always say, good idea, because it's always great to have a few pairs of ears listening to those conversations. So definitely first home buyers, I personally love taking them on that journey. It's so rewarding. We get to spend a lot of time together and just breaking down those walls for them so they don't feel overwhelmed and they can understand what's happening, because buying your first home is the great Australian dream. It's really hard now to save your deposit to actually be able to borrow to be able to buy a home. So it's a big deal and you should be able to enjoy it. So if you're a first home buyer, don't be scared or don't be overwhelmed. There is just a couple of things that you need to make sure that you've done in regards to getting your grants. Simple as you've never owned property before, either with yourself with another person or by yourself. You haven't got a spouse or a de facto that has owned property before, because that would disqualify you as well. Obviously, you're over 18. You're an Australian citizen, or if there's more than one purchaser, at least one of you is an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. And then there is the residence requirement, which is absolutely crucial. So within 12 months of settlement, you've got to live there for at least 6 months continuously. Now, there's one really good thing here is that while you're living in the property in that 6 months, you can actually rent out some rooms. You didn't used to be allowed to do that. And a lot of first home buyers, they've got mates that they want to have live there and share to help contribute to the mortgage, things like that, and pay a bit of rent. That is totally okay. You are allowed to rent out a room or two while you're still living there. Of course, you can't rent out the whole property within that continuous 6 months because you've got to be there. Financial advisor has him on the right track for the deposit. That's amazing, Sally, because having a consistent savings to be able to show a deposit is actually one of the hardest things for first home buyers now. You can't just rock up to a bank with your $40,000 in savings and say, can I have a loan? They actually need to see how you've saved for that $40,000, and they need to see that you're doing it regularly. So, the best piece of advice that I can give a first home buyer that's really trying to show a pattern to be able to get a loan is make sure that you are putting away regular amounts every single week without fail, because the bank really looks at that. They go right through your statements. They want to see that you can actually service a loan. So make sure that you're making regular deposits into your account and you just don't touch it no matter what. You might have a parent that's giving you a gift of some money or something like that as well, but you still need to be able to show what they call those genuine savings. And that is so important. Get rid of your debts, get rid of your, any unpaid Telstra bills or anything like that. We're getting off topic a little bit here, but while we're talking about first home buyers, I've seen loans knocked back because someone hasn't paid a Telstra bill 30 days late. They've got an old Blockbuster account where they never returned a DVD. You really need to be thinking about all of these things. Banks really look at the holistic picture now when they're lending money to people. You need to have genuine savings. You need to have been in your job for, at least 6 months. If you're self-employed, probably at least 2 years. You can't be on contract. You need to be a full-time employment contract. There's a lot of things there you need to think about, and you need to be in it for the long run. Deciding to buy a home doesn't happen in 3 months. You should be making a plan a year, 2 years out as soon as you get your job, and making those plans to make sure that you're putting everything in place that is possible to set yourself up to be able to get your first loan, to be able to buy your first place and really enjoy it, okay? But as a first home buyer, to get those stamp duty and grant benefits, it's really important that you follow those rules. You must live there for at least 6 months in the first 12 months continuously. You must be over 18. You must be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. And you or your partner or de facto, even if they're not buying the property with you, even if they are not going to be on this title with you and you're buying it just in your name, if you have a spouse or a de facto that has already received first home benefits, you will not be able to get them. So that's really important that you research all of that beforehand, because you don't want to get caught out a couple of days from settlement and find out that you actually have to be stamp duty and trying to come up with that $20,000. It's all about being prepared, eliminating risk. All right, so now I'm going to just tell you one little cool, little tricky thing that you can actually do as a first home buyer. So we've spoken about first home buyers, how they can get their stamp duty exemptions. And if you are actually building a new home, there's some amazing packages out there for first home buyers. You don't have to pay any stamp duty on the land. You start paying off your loan as the progression and the construction actually goes through of the property, and you don't have pay any stamp duty on the house either, and you get a grant which is paid directly to the builder to help with your installment payments. So sometimes building a brand new home right now with the amazing packages that are available is a really good idea for first home buyers, but only if it fits in your budget, okay? So don't go over capitalizing and buying a brand new home just because you think it's a good deal if it's gonna be 100 grand over what you think you can afford to pay, all right? And just really quickly, when we're talking about saving for your deposit to become a first home buyer, rule of thumb, the more deposit you have, the better you're gonna do. You need to have 10%. If you can come up with 20%, brilliant. You'll save a lot of money on fees and insurance. But you just need to think about tiny little changes in your lifestyle that can make a huge impact to your savings ability. Just little things like date night, going to the movies on the cheap night, making sure you only have takeaway once a week. You know, the smallest, tiniest changes in your budgets can make a huge impact later on in life. So that savings history is the most important thing besides having a full-time regular job in a permanent contract for a first home buyer, okay? If you have any questions about first home buyers, feel free to contact me. The Revenue Office has amazing information on their website. They have a free hotline as well. So, you know, there are odd situations where people have inherited properties and sold them but never lived in them. And, you know, little one-off scenarios where people need to ask questions. I had one actually today. Actually, I forgot about this one. A client has been living at a property with her partner and they have separated. He hasn't been living there for quite some time and she is going to buy the property from him. It is not in her name at all. She's actually going to be able to get the first home benefits. So even though she has never owned a property, the property that they lived in for many years together was just in his name, but because they are separated and they have been separated for some time, she can actually get the first home buyer's stamp duty exemption when she buys from him, which is a really rare scenario. But what my point is, if you're one of these people that has these really rare scenarios, the Revenue Office has a hotline that you can ring and get information on, or you can contact my office. But the Revenue Office is of course free and it has it all there available for you. So if you're a first home buyer doing your research, make those free calls so that you're arming yourself with information and you know exactly what's coming up, how much more time you need to save, if you're going to get stamp duty exemptions, and what type of benefits are going to be available to you. Sally, reduce the coffees we buy. This is true. This is true. It's very hard this time of year though when it's a little bit chilly, but you could use a keep cup and that would reduce your coffees. And I think it works out that if you use a keep cup, every 6 coffee or something with the reductions would have paid for itself. So maybe that's your idea to do, okay? Gang, thanks for joining in. You know, first home buyers, it's really the talk of the town right now because now is the time to be looking if you're a first home buyer. The market is really ready for you. It is prime, prices are low, interest rates haven't been lower. So if you're a first home buyer, everybody, as you know, is all talking about it. The market is your oyster right now, ready to go and smash it. But make sure yourself is armed with information so that you make really good decisions without emotion. That's what it is all about, arming yourself with information so that you don't have any emotional decisions on the day. I'm getting, sorry, Gizzy just kicked stuff up everywhere. That is live video. It's right up my nose. Sorry, he just ripped a toy apart at my feet while I was talking and it's up my nose and making my eyes water. Anyway, that is live video for you. That is Confessions of a Conveyancer. Save hard, research, arm yourself with information. There is so many free resources out there that there is no reason to fly blind anymore. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to go live on my personal Facebook page, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about an exciting project that I am working on at the moment, a presentation I am doing next week at the Chamber of Commerce in Albury, in regards to trust. It's about perception, branding, why trust is so important, what makes someone trustworthy or not trustworthy. I'm going to share just a little bit of a glimpse tomorrow about where we're going to go with it. I'm going to drop a couple of truth bombs to get your mind thinking. So jump on tomorrow on my live, on my personal page. And if you're interested, jump onto the Chamber of Commerce website. There's still tickets available. It is next Wednesday. It's a lunchtime session, 12:30 to 1:30. We are going to be dropping some mind bombs, really get you thinking about your reputation, your perception, what type of first impressions you're giving off online, in person, and just really get you thinking about who are you and what do people think you are, okay? That's it for me, Wednesday, signing off. I'll talk to you again soon.